Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
"You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer," my brother announced to the whole room. Even as my real military badge hung around my neck, he had no idea who I really was. Sup, Reddit. My brother arrested me in the middle of Sunday dinner at our grandmother's house. Full handcuffs, read me my rights, the whole 9 yards. He's the chief of police in our hometown, and he'd convinced himself I was some kind of federal impersonator running a scam. Had a whole folder of evidence and everything. Even called in backup to secure the perimeter, like I was some dangerous fugitive. Picture this. I'm sitting there with a fork in my hand, eating pot roast, when my own flesh and blood announces to the entire family that I've been living a lie for almost 2 decades. My mom starts crying. My uncle's nodding like he knew it all along. My cousins are staring at me like I just grew a second head. And Alex, my brother, he's standing there in his crisp police chief uniform with this smug look on his face, like he just solved the crime of the century. Here's the thing he didn't know. I'm actually a 2-star general in military intelligence. Not a captain, not a major, a general. The kind that has security clearances so high that most of Congress doesn't even know what I work on. When my emergency beacon went off, a federal response team scrambled from Fort Claiborne with my commanding officer in tow. Watching my brother's face when Major General Marcus Delaney stepped out of a government SUV in full-dress uniform, walked up to me in handcuffs, and gave me a crisp salute while calling me General Caldwell, was worth every second of humiliation. Worth every second of those cold metal handcuffs cutting into my wrists. Worth the 17 years of family dysfunction that led to that moment. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let me break this down for you from the beginning, because the story of how a police chief arrests his own brother at Sunday dinner is a lot more complicated than it sounds. I'm Cameron, 37M. I've been active duty military for 19 years, currently working at a level I literally cannot discuss in detail. Let's just say my job involves a lot of classified briefings and strategic planning that would bore most people to death, but occasionally keeps the country running smoothly. I live outside DC in a secure apartment complex that doesn't show up on Google Maps, and the last time I set foot in my hometown of Chesterfield, Virginia, was 7 years ago for my dad's funeral. My brother Alex is 40 meters, and he's been the police chief there for the past 3 years. Before that, he worked his way up from beat cop to sergeant to deputy chief over the course of 15 years. He's the golden child, always has been. Stayed close to home, married his high school girlfriend Jennifer, coaches Little League Baseball every summer, serves on the town council, volunteers at the fire department fundraisers, the whole small town success story that makes mothers proud. Meanwhile, I'm the one who abandoned the family by enlisting in the Army right out of high school instead of going to community college like Alex did. Never mind that I've served in 3 combat zones. Never mind that I've received 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. Never mind that I've dedicated my entire adult life to protecting this country, including the little town I came from. Our relationship has always been complicated, and by complicated, I mean toxic as hell. When we were kids, I was the one Dad called the strategist because I was good at puzzles and planning things out, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Alex was the rock because he was physically strong, reliable, the kind of guy who could fix a car engine or build a deck without breaking a sweat. I didn't realize until much later how much that distinction messed with his head. See, Alex needed to be the best at everything. When I made honor roll in school, he'd spend weeks talking about how grades don't matter in the real world. When I got accepted to a state university with a partial scholarship, he'd make comments about how college boys end up working for men with experience. When I enlisted and started climbing ranks, he'd laugh and say I was just taking orders while he was making real decisions as a cop. The thing is, Dad loved both of us, but he saw different strengths in us. And Alex couldn't handle the idea that his younger brother might be better at something, anything, than he was. After Dad died, the distance between us became permanent. I flew in on 24-hour leave for the funeral, showed up in my dress uniform, paid my respects, and left the next morning before anyone woke up. My mom made it pretty clear I was an inconvenience. I hadn't been there at the end like Alex had, so my grief was somehow less valid. That was the last time we spoke face to face, until the letter arrived. It was a Tuesday afternoon, around 3:15 p.m. when the letter hit my desk. Physical mail, pale blue stationery, my mother's looping handwriting. It had gone through about 4 levels of security screening to reach me, which should tell you something about where I work. The letter was a masterpiece of guilt tripping. She went on about how the family missed me, how Alex was doing such wonderful things as chief of police, how Grandma was getting older and wanted to see me. The kicker was the last line. We're having a family dinner at your grandmother's this Sunday, 6 p.m. It's been too long, Cameron. It's time to come home. I sat there reading it 3 times, and my gut was telling me something was off. My mom doesn't do casual invitations. Everything with her is strategic, a way to reassert the family hierarchy with Alex at the top and me as the disappointing absence. But here's the thing. I was tired of avoiding it. Not because I wanted their approval anymore. I'd given up on that years ago. I just wanted to face them as the man I'd become, not the kid they remembered. Close the chapter once and for all. I requested 48-hour leave. My CO, General Marcus Delaney, approved it in under 5 minutes with a note. Family matters. Stay safe, Caldwell. Call if you need anything. That message would turn out to be more prophetic than either of us knew. The drive to Chesterfield took about 2.5 hours. I left at 3:30 p.m. on Sunday to arrive right at 6. As I got closer, the landscape shifted from D.C. sprawl to rolling Virginia hills and old farmhouses. Every mile felt like traveling backward through my own history. I rolled into town at 5:47 p.m. Main Street looked exactly the same. Same hardware store, same diner, same everything. What was new was the gleaming black and white police cruiser parked in front of Town Hall, with Chief of Police Alex Caldwell emblazoned in gold letters on the door. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a throne on wheels. I parked my sedan a few houses down from Grandma's place at 5:54 p.m. Sat there for a minute, getting my head right. Then I noticed something odd. A dark sedan I didn't recognize parked 2 houses down, engine off, windows tinted, and another figure near the corner, partially hidden by a hedge. My training kicked in immediately. That's not neighbors out for a walk. That's a perimeter. Someone was watching the house. I made a mental note and got out of the car. Grandma opened the door before I could knock. She's 80 years old but still sharp as a tack. She pulled me into a hug, and as she did, she whispered directly into my ear, "I'm so glad you came, Cameron, but be careful. Your brother's been planning this. He thinks he's found something. Don't let him get to you." Then she pulled back with a bright smile for anyone watching and said loudly, "Come in, come in. Everyone's been waiting." The living room was packed. Mom was first to see me, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Cameron, you made it. We were beginning to think you'd forgotten about us." Then Alex stood up from Dad's old armchair. He'd claimed it as his own, apparently. He's about 6 feet 2 inches now, or maybe he just carries himself that way. His handshake was aggressive, a dominance display. "Little brother," he said with a smirk, "decided to grace us with your presence, huh?" "Something like that," I replied, pulling my hand back. My Uncle Robert gave me a curt nod. "Still playing soldier?" My cousin Maya offered a shy smile, but looked away when Mom glared at her. The message was clear. I was on my own. Dinner was psychological warfare disguised as pot roast. The seating arrangement said everything. Alex sat at the head of the table, Dad's spot. Mom sat to his right. Grandma was at the opposite end. I was halfway down on the side, like a distant relative nobody really wanted there. The conversation was nonstop praise for Alex. "Alex, tell Cameron about the new patrol cars you got for the department. Tell him about that charity event you organized, son. The mayor said such wonderful things about you at the town meeting." Alex soaked it all in with false modesty, recounting his accomplishments like he was running for office. I just kept eating, offering the occasional, "That's great," or "Good for you." My non-reactions were clearly driving him insane. He wanted me to get defensive, to argue, to show weakness. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Then, Mom turned to my cousin Maya and said, "It must be interesting what you do, Cameron. All that traveling." Before I could answer, Mom cut in. "Oh, Maya, don't bother asking. He won't tell you anything. It's all a big secret. Not like Alex, who shares everything with his family." The silence that followed was heavy enough to collapse the table. Grandma shot Mom a look that could have melted steel, but the damage was done. Through the dining room window, I caught movement, a figure detaching from the shadows across the street, near an oak tree. Then I spotted another one near the corner. 2 of them, positioned like they were setting up a perimeter. This wasn't just a dinner. This was an operation. "Excuse me," I said, pushing back my chair. "I need some air." Mom frowned. "Cameron, we're in the middle of dinner. Don't be rude." "Just for a moment," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. Outside, I did a casual stretch like I was working out a cramp from the drive. As I did, I scanned the street. The dark sedan was still there, and I could now confirm 2 officers in position, young, nervous, clearly Alex's deputies. They weren't trying to be invisible, just inconspicuous enough. My brother had set up a perimeter around Grandma's house. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was official resources being used for a personal vendetta. I went back inside at 6:23 p.m., my face carefully neutral. As I sat down, Mom fixed me with a look. You're always so secretive, Cameron. You disappear for years. We barely hear from you. Your brother is an open book. He serves this town. What is it that you do that's so important you can't even tell your own family? It's complicated, Mom, I said quietly. It's complicated. Alex mimicked with a harsh laugh. That's the answer for everything, isn't it? For missing birthdays. For missing Dad's final weeks. For missing everything that matters. That's enough, Alex, Grandma said sharply. But Alex waved her off. No, it's not enough. For years, we've all just accepted Cameron's mysterious job, his important life. We've all just played along like it's normal. Like it's okay that he just disappeared and left us here. He stood up, his full height casting a shadow across the table. He was at least 6 feet 2 inches now, and he used every inch of it for intimidation. He picked up a wine glass and tapped it deliberately with a spoon. 3 sharp rings. The sound cut through the room like a judge's gavel. Everyone stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped breathing. Actually, he said, his voice dropping to that measured, authoritative tone he probably used during press conferences, I think it's time, past time really, that we all found out exactly what my little brother has been up to. Because I haven't just been wondering, folks. I've been doing some serious digging over the past 6 months. Called in some favors, asked some hard questions, spent some money. And what I found? Well, let's just say it's quite the story. The kind of story that changes everything. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw it clearly now. The hunger for this moment. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a public execution, and he'd invited everyone to watch. Here's where it gets interesting. Alex reached down and grabbed a thick manila folder I'd noticed earlier on the side table. He slapped it down in the center of the dinner table with a dramatic thud that made everyone jump. I've had my doubts, he began, pacing behind his chair like a prosecutor. My brother, the military man. Secret job, important work, can't talk about it. Very impressive. But no details, no promotions we could celebrate, no stories. Just vague job titles that let him stay away from us. He let that hang in the air, poisoning the room. So I did what any concerned brother would do. I hired a private investigator. The collective gasp went around the table. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. A good one, too, Alex continued, opening the folder. Guy named Markham. Sent him to D.C. to check out Cameron's life, and what he found is all right here. He started pulling out surveillance photos, tossing them onto the table. Me entering my apartment building. Me meeting a colleague in a park. Then more photos. Boxes being delivered to my address with government markings. These boxes, Alex said, pointing, contained restricted government property, high-tech electronics, communications gear, things a legitimate officer would have on a secure base, not in a civilian apartment. Then he pulled out papers. And this is the real kicker. My investigator got copies of documents from Cameron's apartment. Financial records, encrypted communications, mission briefings. He held one up. Most of it was redacted with black lines, but the header read, OSD, classified. I ran his service record through some back channels. Alex lied smoothly. The military has no record of a Captain Cameron Caldwell assigned to any high-level intelligence unit. Basic service record, sure. But then it all goes dark. Like someone created a fake identity. He leaned forward, hands flat on the table. You see, my brother isn't a secret agent. He's a fraud. He's been using a low-level military background to acquire government property, probably selling it on the black market. He's been living a lie, funded by stolen valor. He looked at me with a triumphant smile. It's over, Cameron. I know what you are. The room was dead silent. My family, who'd known me my entire life, were looking at me like I was a dangerous stranger. They didn't question the massive logical holes in his theory. They just saw the confident police chief with his folder full of evidence, and they believed him. So, Alex said, his voice dropping to an official tone, as the chief law enforcement officer of this county, it is my duty to act. He started walking around the table toward me. My cousin sitting next to me actually shrank away, pulling his chair back like I was contagious. Cameron Caldwell, Alex announced. I am placing you under arrest for impersonation of a federal officer and theft of government property. He was behind me now. I didn't resist when he grabbed my left arm and pulled it back. Do you have anything to say for yourself? He asked, his voice low and smug near my ear. I turned my head slightly. Are you sure you have the authority for this, Alex? The question caught him off guard. What? These are federal crimes, I said calmly. committed by someone in the military. This would fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The investigation would be handled by the JAG Corps, not a local police department. You're out of your lane, Chief. For a split second, doubt flickered across his face, but his ego crushed it. Don't lecture me on the law, you fraud. In the real world, I'm in charge. That's when he brought out the handcuffs. The first one clicked shut on my left wrist at exactly 6:47 p.m. As he reached for my other arm, my right hand moved to my belt. There's a small, almost invisible button stitched into the side seam, a personal emergency beacon, standard issue for deep cover assignments. I held it down for 3 full seconds. A tiny vibration against my skin confirmed the signal had been sent. It was a silent cry for help, transmitted to a satellite and routed directly to Fort Claiborne, 47 miles away. The second cuff clicked shut at 6:48 p.m. Standard response time for a compromised agent alert in a domestic environment, 12 to 15 minutes. Alex hauled me to my feet. "Let's go," he said, pushing me toward the door. "You can test your legal theories from a jail cell. Being marched through your grandmother's house in handcuffs is a special kind of humiliation." Every eye followed me, but no one spoke. The silence was a verdict. Guilty. Mom stood by the fireplace, arms wrapped around herself, face showing nothing but martyred disappointment. She'd wanted a reason to justify her narrative of me as the wayward son, and Alex had gift-wrapped it. Uncle Robert shook his head slowly. "I knew he was no good," he muttered, loud enough for me to hear. Maya stared at her plate, unable to look at me. She knew this was wrong, but she was too afraid to speak against the family's golden child. The only person who met my eyes was Grandma. She stood near the doorway, hands clasped. As Alex pushed me past her, her eyes met mine. In them I saw regret, but also hope. She'd warned me he was planning something. Now I understood. She'd wanted this to happen. She wanted his poison drawn out into the open, no matter how ugly it got. This wasn't just my fight. It was hers too. Outside at 6:52 p.m., the 2 deputies I'd spotted earlier materialized from the shadows. Young kids, maybe 24, clearly in awe of their chief. "Get him in the car," Alex ordered. They opened the back door of the cruiser at 6:53 p.m. One put his hand on my head, standard procedure, and guided me into the back seat. Alex leaned in through the open window. "You'll have a lot of time to think about where it all went wrong. Maybe you'll finally learn that you can't build a life on lies." The irony was suffocating. He was lecturing me on honesty, while his entire identity was built on being the big fish in a tiny pond. I checked my watch. 6:54 p.m. 10 minutes since I pressed the button. My heart was steady, my breathing even. In my line of work, you learn to wait. You learn to trust your training and your team. The waiting is the hardest part, but it's also where you win or lose. Alex thought he'd already won. He had no idea the firing squad was already on its way. At 7 p.m., 12 minutes after I sent the signal, it began. Not with sirens, with something far more intimidating. The low, synchronized hum of powerful engines moving at high speed. 2 sets of headlights cut through the darkness at the end of the street. Not flashing, just piercing white beams. They weren't police cruisers. They were large black SUVs, government issue, the kind with no chrome that seemed to absorb light. They didn't slow down. They sped up, converging on the house from both ends of the street in a perfect pincer movement. They screeched to a halt at 7:01 p.m., blocking the road entirely, their headlights pinning Alex's cruiser in brilliant, inescapable light. Alex straightened up, squinting. "What the hell?" I didn't call for backup. The doors flew open simultaneously. Men in black tactical gear poured out, armed with short-barreled rifles. They moved with fluid, terrifying efficiency. They weren't cops. They were federal agents. They established a perimeter around the house in seconds, moving like a single organism. The 2 young deputies froze, hands hovering near their sidearms. They were hopelessly outmatched. From the lead SUV, a man in a suit stepped out. He walked directly toward Alex, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Are you Chief Alex Caldwell?" the man asked, his voice flat. Alex puffed out his chest. "I am. And who are you?" "This is my crime scene. Identify yourselves." The man held up credentials. "Special Agent Rollins, Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is no longer your crime scene. This is now a matter of national security. Step away from the vehicle." "National security?" Alex scoffed, though uncertainty crept into his voice. "Don't be ridiculous. I have a federal impersonator in custody. This is a local matter under my control." Agent Rollins's eyes were like ice. "You have made a grave error, Chief. A very grave error. He nodded to two agents who moved on Alex. They didn't rough him up. Their movements were clean, clinical. One took his sidearm from its holster, while the other guided his hands behind his back. "What are you doing?" Alex sputtered. "Alex, you can't do this. I'm the chief of police." "Your authority ends where federal law begins," Rollins said calmly, like explaining rules to a child. He walked to the cruiser and opened my door. He looked at me, then at the cuffs, then turned to one of the bewildered deputies. "Give me the key." The kid fumbled for it, hands shaking. Rollins took it, unlocked my cuffs, and helped me out. "Sir, are you harmed?" he asked. "I'm fine, Rollins," I said, rubbing my wrists. I'd crossed paths with him on a joint task force a few years back. Alex stared, jaw hanging open. The sight of a high-level federal agent treating me with deference, calling me sir, had short-circuited his brain. But the real earthquake was about to hit. The rear door of the lead SUV opened at 7:03 p.m. The man who stepped out was in his late 50s, tall and broad-shouldered with silver hair. He wore the Class A uniform of a United States Army general. On his chest was a constellation of ribbons and medals. On his shoulders were two silver stars. Major General Marcus Delaney, my commanding officer, a man who reports directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He strode past the tactical agents, his boots clicking on the asphalt. He didn't look at Alex, the deputies, or the neighbors, now peering from windows. His eyes were fixed on me. He stopped 2 feet in front of me and brought his hand up in a crisp, perfect salute. "General Caldwell," he said, his voice a low, powerful baritone that carried absolute authority. "We received your signal. Are you secure?" The title hung in the air like a bomb blast. General Caldwell. Agent Rollins and the other federal agents snapped to attention. The two young deputies looked like they were about to pass out. And Alex, my brother, the all-powerful police chief, his face collapsed. The arrogance, the triumph, the certainty, it all evaporated, replaced by pale, sick confusion. The brother he'd arrested as a fraud was a 2-star general in military intelligence. In the rigid hierarchy Alex worshipped, I outranked him by a measure he couldn't even comprehend. General Delaney dropped his salute. "Rollins," he said without looking away from me. "Report." "Subject is secure, General," Rollins replied. "The local officer has been neutralized." "He's been identified as the subject's brother." Delaney finally turned to Alex, his gaze carrying the weight of an avalanche. "Chief," he said, the title dripping with contempt, "you are in violation of at least a dozen federal laws and articles of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Unlawful detainment of a superior officer, interference with a national security asset, conspiracy, willful mishandling of classified information. The list is extensive." He gestured to the agents. "He is hereby relieved of his duties and placed in federal custody. He is not to leave the county pending a full investigation. Get him out of my sight." The agents started leading Alex away. He finally found his voice. A pathetic squeak. "But I didn't know. He's my brother. I thought he was lying. I was trying to protect my town." Delaney stepped toward him, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Ignorance is not a defense. You let your petty jealousy and small-town ego endanger a man who has sacrificed more for this country than you could ever comprehend. You didn't just arrest your brother tonight. You committed career suicide." They pushed him into the back of an SUV. As the door slammed at 7:06 p.m., his eyes met mine through the glass. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear in them. With Alex gone, an eerie calm settled over the scene. The tactical agents maintained their perimeter. Inside the house, the family had gathered at the windows, faces pressed against the glass. Delaney turned to me. "Let's go inside. We need to secure any compromised materials." As we walked up the porch steps at 7:08 p.m., the front door opened. Mom stood there, face ashen. She stared at the stars on Delaney's shoulders, then at me. "Marcus," she whispered. She'd known him years ago when he and Dad served together. "Eleanor," Delaney said, his tone professional but cold. "It's been a long time. I wish it were under better circumstances." "What's happening?" she pleaded. "Alex made a mistake. He didn't understand. You have to tell them to let him go." "Your son Alex," Delaney corrected sharply, "is a disgrace to the badge he wears. He illegally obtained classified intelligence, brought it into an unsecured dwelling, and used it to unlawfully detain a flag officer. His mistake will be reviewed by a federal prosecutor." Mom flinched like she'd been slapped. "But you knew Richard. You knew our family. He would want you to protect Alex." "I didn't know Richard," Delaney cut her off, "and he would be ashamed. Ashamed that one of his sons let envy rot him from the inside out." Agent Rollins and 2 others brushed past us into the dining room. I heard them collecting the photos and documents. Evidence now in a federal case. Mom looked at me, her eyes filling with desperate confusion that quickly turned to blame. A general? You're a general. Why didn't you tell us? You let this happen. You could have stopped this. The accusation was breathtaking in its injustice. Even now, even after everything, it was my fault. Not Alex's for staging an illegal takedown, but mine for not managing his jealousy better. I took a deep breath. The cool night air felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. Why didn't I tell you? I repeated her question quietly. Because you never asked. Not really. Of course I held up a hand. No. You asked why I wasn't home for Christmas. You asked why I couldn't get a normal job. You asked why I couldn't be more like Alex. You never once looked at me and asked, Cameron, who are you? What drives you? Are you happy? You never asked about me. You only ever complained about who I wasn't. I stepped closer. My life is classified because it has to be. The work I do protects people, protects this country, protects this family, whether you appreciate it or not. To do it, I have to be a ghost. I accepted that. But I never thought my own family would try to put me in a grave. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of self-pity. We love you, Cameron. No, I said firmly. You love the idea of me. The version that fits into your life, the prodigal son you could one day welcome home. You've never seen the man standing in front of you? Tonight proved that. I looked at Grandma, standing by herself near the door. I gave her a small, sad nod. She nodded back, a silent understanding passing between us. General Delaney is right, I said, turning back to Mom. Dad would be ashamed. Not of me. Of what this family has become. I walked away at 7:14 p.m., down the porch steps and toward the waiting SUV where Delaney was waiting. I didn't look back. The door closed, sealing me inside the quiet interior. You okay, Cameron? Delaney asked, his voice softer now. I will be, I said, watching the little blue house recede in the rearview mirror until it was just another light in the darkness. Update. 8 months later. The legal aftermath was swift and brutal, like watching a tsunami destroy a sandcastle. Alex's case was fast-tracked through the federal system, with a speed that would have impressed anyone familiar with how slowly justice usually moves. His title as police chief didn't help him. In fact, it made everything exponentially worse. He was an officer of the law who had willfully, deliberately broken it for personal reasons. And the federal prosecutor assigned to the case, a sharp-eyed woman named Alana Reed, who had a reputation for being absolutely merciless with corrupt officials, was determined to make an example of him. His defense team tried everything in their playbook. They filed motions to have the case moved to a local court, arguing it was essentially a family dispute that had gotten out of hand and should be handled at the state level. Denied within 48 hours. They argued that Alex was acting in good faith based on the information provided by his investigator, that he genuinely believed he was exposing a criminal. Reed absolutely demolished that argument in a preliminary hearing by presenting years of unauthorized background checks Alex had run on me through law enforcement databases, proving a disturbing pattern of obsessive harassment and surveillance that went back almost to the day he became chief. She showed the judge search queries like Cameron Caldwell military records, Cameron Caldwell security clearance verification, and Cameron Caldwell employment verification that Alex had run dozens of times using police department resources. The timestamps showed he'd been checking up on me at least twice a month for 3 solid years. That wasn't concern. That was obsession. I was not required to testify in open court for security reasons. Instead, I gave my testimony in a sealed deposition at a secure military facility with General Delaney and 2 JAG Corps attorneys present to ensure no classified information was compromised. The deposition lasted 4 hours. I stated the facts clearly and without emotion. The dinner invitation, the arrest, the so-called evidence Alex presented, the handcuffs, the federal response. I didn't editorialize. I didn't speak about childhood rivalries or sibling jealousy or family dysfunction. The bare facts were damning enough on their own. But here's where it gets interesting. The key witness that absolutely buried Alex wasn't me, wasn't Delaney, wasn't even the FBI agents. It was Markham, the private investigator Alex had hired to dig into my life. Turns out Markham had been facing his own legal troubles for some questionable practices in other cases, and the feds offered him a deal he couldn't refuse. Complete testimony in exchange for reduced charges on his own activities. When Markham took the stand on day 2 of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Local reporters, federal officials, even some folks from Chesterfield who wanted to see how their beloved police chief would fare. Markham looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks, which he probably hadn't. Prosecutor Reed's questioning was surgical. "Mr. Markham," she began, "after you acquired the documents and photographs from General Caldwell's residence, what was your professional assessment?" Markham shifted in his seat, adjusting his tie nervously. He was a veteran investigator with 20 years of experience, and it showed in every word. "They were real," he said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. "Genuinely classified military intelligence materials. I've been a private investigator for 2 decades. You see a lot of fake credentials, a lot of wannabes playing dress-up. This wasn't that. This was the real deal. High-level, legitimate, dangerous stuff. The kind of material that gets people sent to federal prison for a very long time. And did you communicate this assessment to your client, Chief Alex Caldwell?" "I did," Markham said firmly. "I called him the same evening I finished my analysis. It was around 9 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember because my wife was upset that I was working late again." "What exactly did you tell him?" Markham took a deep breath. "I said, Alex, this isn't what you think it is. These aren't fake documents. This is real classified intelligence material. Your brother is the real deal. You need to drop this investigation immediately. Burn these files, pretend this conversation never happened, or you're going to bring a world of trouble down on yourself and probably destroy your career in the process." The courtroom was dead silent. "And what was Chief Caldwell's response to your warning?" Markham's expression darkened with remembered frustration. "He laughed at me. Actually laughed. Then he called me a coward and said I didn't have the stomach for real police work. He said, and I'm quoting here because I wrote it down afterward, he said, 'I'm going to be a hero, Markham. I'm going to expose the biggest fraud in this county's history. You'll be reading about me in the papers, and you'll wish you had the guts to see it through.'" Reed let that hang in the air for a long moment. "So, to be absolutely clear, you explicitly warned Chief Caldwell that proceeding with this case could have serious legal consequences." "Multiple times," Markham confirmed. "I called him 3 separate times trying to convince him to drop it. The last call, I told him I wanted no further part in the investigation and that I was washing my hands of the whole thing. He told me I was fired and that he'd handle it himself from there." The defense attorney tried to salvage things during cross-examination, suggesting that Markham was only testifying to save himself, but the damage was catastrophic. Alex hadn't just made a mistake. He'd been explicitly warned by a professional and had proceeded anyway out of pure ego. The trial lasted 3 days total. The prosecution presented 17 witnesses, including 3 FBI agents, 2 military intelligence officers, and even my building's security guard who testified about the protocols for my residence. The defense called 4 character witnesses from Chesterfield, who talked about what a great chief Alex had been, how he'd reduced crime and improved community relations. None of it mattered. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning with their verdict. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. I was in the back of the courtroom when they brought Alex in for sentencing. He'd lost weight, looked pale and broken in his orange jumpsuit. The judge handed down 12 years in federal prison, minimum 5 before parole eligibility, permanently barred from owning firearms or holding public office, mandatory psychiatric counseling. Mom wasn't there. She couldn't bear to see her golden child in chains. The only family member present was Grandma. She sat with her back straight, face impassive. As they led Alex away, she closed her eyes and a single tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't for the man going to prison. It was for the little boy he used to be, and for the family he'd shattered. Final update. 2 years later, life went on. The incident necessitated a change in my operational status. My cover was blown in certain circles, which led to a promotion to a more strategic role at the Pentagon. I was no longer in the field. I was directing the people who were. Alex wrote me letters from prison. The first few were rage-filled blame. Then they shifted to desperate pleas for help. The last few were rambling attempts at introspection. I read the first one, skimmed the second, and burned the rest unopened. There was nothing left to say. My only contact with Chesterfield is through Grandma. We talk every few weeks. She never mentions Alex or Mom. We talk about her garden, about books, about the weather. It's our unspoken agreement to build something new. I also started seeing a counselor on base. Delaney's suggestion. In one session, I had a memory surface. I was about 10, working on a model airplane with Dad. When I finished, he held it up and said, "You see, Cameron, you have a strategist's mind. You see the whole picture. That's a different kind of strength." Alex was standing in the doorway, fresh from football practice, holding a trophy. He'd heard what Dad said. I saw the look on his face, the flash of hurt, of being overlooked. That's when I understood. Alex had been the hero, the strong one, the protector. But Dad had praised my mind. Alex couldn't stand it. He spent the rest of his life trying to prove my strength was a lie. He hadn't just been jealous of my career. He'd been jealous of a single sentence spoken 30 years ago in a garage. He built a prison of resentment for himself long before the federal government built a physical one. Sitting in that office, I didn't feel anger toward my brother. For the first time, I just felt profound pity. Last I heard, he's got about 9 years and 4 months left on his sentence at a federal correctional facility in Pennsylvania. Mom still doesn't talk to me. And honestly, I'm fine with that. The silence is better than the guilt trips. Uncle Robert actually published an op-ed in the Chesterfield Gazette publicly disowning me and defending Alex, which was hilarious considering he has zero relevance to my life, and nobody outside a 50-mile radius has ever heard of him. Maya reached out about 6 months after the trial to apologize for not speaking up that night, and now we grab coffee when I'm in the area once or twice a year. She's actually good people. She was just scared of going against the family tide. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.